Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're exploring the book of Second Kings, a dramatic and transformative event of Second Kings. It is a continuation of Israel and Judah's history that led to the eventual downfall and exile. And we see the stories of powerful prophets, rebellious kings, and miraculous events. Now, there are major themes we can find in Second Kings. Now, number one is God's sovereignty and judgment, God's control over the nations, and then his judgment against sin. Number two is the prophetic ministry. Now we see highlights of the roles of the prophets like Elijah and Elisha in guiding, warning, and performing miracles in the nations. Number three is faithfulness and unfaithfulness. Now we see the faithful actions of individuals with widespread of unfaithful kings and the people. Now there are key events and stories we can pick out from Second Kings. One is Elijah's ascension and Elisha's ministry. Now Elisha was taken up to heaven by a whirlwind and then left his mantle for Elisha. And we see the miracles of Elisha, like purifying the water, multiplying the oil, and raising the dead, like the widow's son. Number two is another key event we see is the war and political turmoil in the nations. There were numerous battles that occurred, including conflict between Moab and the Arams, and then we see assassinations of different kings and coup. Kings were frequently assassinating, leading to a lot of insecurity and instability. Then another event we see is the fall of Israel, which is the northern kingdom. Remember that the kingdom after Solomon was divided into two, the northern and the southern, which is the fall Israel and Judah. Now in the fall of Israel, we see Assyrians take over, like Israel falls to Assyria in 722 BC, and then there was, because of the persistent sin and idolatry, they fall to the Assyrians. Number four events that we see in Second Kings is Hezekiah and Josiah's reformations. Now King Hezekiah brought temporary reformation, leading people back to God, trusting in God, where God extended his life. And then we see a lot of witnesses of miracles from the deliverance of Assyria during the rule of King Hezekiah. Number two is King Josiah, his reformation. Now we see that he brought significant religious reforms in the nation, but it was too late because he could not even prevent the fall of Judah, which is the southern kingdom. Number five event we see is Judah finally falling at the feet of Babylonians. Now Judah falls at the feet of the Babylonians in 580 BC under the rule of Nebuchadnezzar. Now we see also that the temple was destroyed. The whole temple that Solomon invested time and money and David planned was destroyed. And finally the Israelites were exiled away. Now there are key lessons to take home. Number one is obedience to God. When you obey the Lord, it brings about blessing, but when you disobey the Lord, it brings about downfall and judgment. And this was what we see in the book of Second Kings. Number two is patience. God's patience. God was very patient with these people. God was just. He also dealt with their sin because of course God is judge, so he brought about judgment for their sin. Number three is hope in prophecy. Even with despite the whole judgment, there was still hope through the prophets. God still brought his word and messages of future restoration through the prophet, so God was still merciful. Finally, Second Kings teaches us about the importance of faithfulness and the consequences of turning away from God. As we reflect on these events that we see in Second Kings, what are you reminded of? What stood out for you in the Second Kings? How can we learn from the successes and failures of these ancient kings? What can we pick out from the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel? We see that so many of them were bad kings, some were good and bad, were in between, and then there were really few good kings. Share your thoughts in the comments below if you learned anything, then we can learn together. If you enjoyed this overview, like and subscribe, share with your friends. Also share your own story. Which of the stories stood out for you? What you learned from this book of Second Kings? And don't forget to check out our next video on the book of First Chronicles, where we explore the genealogies and the history of Israel. Now see you next time. Thank you for watching. God loves you crazily. Bye.